Welcome to Frost and Sullivan's Growth Podcast. In each episode, we take a deeper look at transformative shifts shaping global ecosystems, from industry megatrends and technology innovation to evolving customer expectations. Today, we're exploring the remaining performance obligations RPO surge and the future of cloud capacity, unpacking where the next wave of opportunity is unfolding and what it means for future-ready businesses.
For years, the cloud industry enjoyed a relatively straightforward growth story. More businesses migrated applications to the cloud, providers expanded capacity, and demand steadily increased. The formula worked because infrastructure needs were largely predictable. AI has changed that equation. Today, enterprises are no longer asking for generic compute and storage. They want real-time AI inference, access to specialized GPUs, low-latency environments, sovereign cloud capabilities, and tighter control over cloud spending. This shift is forcing hyperscalers to rethink everything from data center design and networking architecture to energy consumption and chip development. What's particularly interesting is that demand isn't the problem. Demand is exploding. The real challenge is whether providers can build enough infrastructure fast enough to keep up. And that's where today's story begins, in the widening gap between AI ambition and infrastructure reality. If AI demand is growing faster than ever, what will separate the winners from the companies that simply can't keep up?
When people think about AI, they usually think about models like ChatGPT, autonomous systems, or intelligent business applications. What often gets overlooked is the physical infrastructure making all of that possible. Every major AI deployment requires vast amounts of computing power, networking capacity, cooling systems, and electricity. In fact, some next-generation AI data centers are being planned at gigawatt scale, something that would have sounded unimaginable just a few years ago. This means cloud growth is no longer limited by customer demand. It's increasingly constrained by factors such as GPU availability, energy supply, land and permitting approvals, cooling and water requirements, network capacity. In other words, cloud providers aren't just competing for customers anymore. They're competing for infrastructure resources.
One metric is becoming increasingly important in understanding the cloud industry's future: remaining performance obligations, or RPO. Think of RPO as the value of business that providers have already contracted but haven't yet delivered. In the AI era, enterprises are signing larger and longer-term infrastructure agreements, causing RPO backlogs to grow rapidly. At first glance, a large backlog sounds like great news. It signals strong future demand. But there's another side to the story. Revenue tells us what providers have successfully delivered. RPO tells us what they still need to deliver. As AI infrastructure becomes more complex and expensive, the gap between those two numbers becomes increasingly important. A provider may have billions in future commitments, but fulfilling those commitments requires data centers, chips, networking, and energy that may not yet exist. The challenge is shifting from selling capacity to executing against promises. How much future growth is truly secure if infrastructure deployment can't keep pace with customer commitments? Do you have the tools to measure this?
A growing RPO backlog can be impressive, but size alone doesn't tell the full story. The more important question is whether that future demand can actually be executed profitably and at scale. This is where Frost & Sullivan's RPO quality assessment framework becomes particularly useful. Instead of focusing only on the value of future contracts, the framework evaluates how resilient and executable those commitments really are. The first dimension is asset specificity. As AI infrastructure becomes more specialized, providers need to assess how easily infrastructure can be repurposed if customer demand changes. Factors such as power availability, permitting timelines, grid constraints, and operational maturity can significantly impact deployment speed and flexibility. The second is customer concentration. While large AI contracts can accelerate growth, heavy dependence on a small number of customers can increase financial and operational risk if demand patterns shift unexpectedly. The third is RPO composition and diversification hedge. A balanced mix of SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS commitments generally creates greater resilience than a portfolio heavily concentrated in infrastructure-intensive AI workloads. Finally, there is the RPO quality profile itself. This considers the practical realities of execution, including financing complexity, cooling requirements, deployment dependencies, and overall infrastructure readiness. In other words, how likely is a provider to successfully deliver on what has already been promised? Together, these four dimensions provide a more nuanced way to evaluate future cloud growth. Because in the AI era, winning isn't just about signing contracts, it's about having the infrastructure, capital, and operational capability to fulfill them.
Another shift is the growing importance of infrastructure control. Cloud providers increasingly recognize that relying entirely on third-party GPU suppliers creates both cost and supply chain risks. That's why many are investing heavily in custom silicon and AI accelerators. The goal isn't just better performance, it's greater control over economics, efficiency, and long-term scalability. At the same time, energy is emerging as a strategic asset. AI workloads consume significantly more power than traditional cloud applications, turning electricity from an operational concern into a competitive differentiator. Future leaders may be defined not only by the software they build, but by their ability to secure chips, power, and infrastructure capacity at scale. So, which partnership strategies and growth processes can help you navigate these bottlenecks with more agility?
Earlier, cloud strategy centered on global scale. The assumption was simple: centralize infrastructure and serve customers everywhere. AI is changing that model. Governments increasingly require data to remain within national borders. Enterprises face growing compliance obligations. At the same time, AI applications often benefit from processing data closer to where it's created. This combination is driving demand for sovereign cloud environments, regional AI infrastructure, edge computing deployments, localized compliance-ready platforms. Rather than a single cloud, we're seeing the emergence of a more distributed cloud ecosystem where customers opt for more hybrid and multi-cloud architectures.
Perhaps the most important shift is that cloud providers are starting to look beyond raw infrastructure expansion. Several high-potential opportunities are emerging. 1. Vertical AI capacity. Dedicated AI infrastructure for industries such as healthcare, finance, and government. 2. Proprietary silicon, reducing dependence on external GPU suppliers while improving margins. 3. AI as a service, moving beyond selling compute and embedding AI directly into enterprise workflows. 4. Edge AI and sovereign cloud, delivering AI capabilities closer to users while satisfying regional compliance requirements. What's notable is that all of these opportunities move providers closer to business outcomes and further away from simple infrastructure sales. The future value may not come from renting more compute. It may come from enabling smarter decisions, faster operations, and entirely new business models. Which opportunity creates the greatest long-term value for your business? More infrastructure or more intelligence built on top of it?
The AI boom has created enormous excitement around cloud infrastructure, but the next decade won't be defined by demand alone. The companies that succeed will be those that can convert demand into deployed capacity, balance growth with execution, and create differentiated value beyond raw compute power. In many ways, the industry is entering a new phase, one where infrastructure, energy, silicon, regulation, and AI strategy are becoming inseparable. The question for every provider, enterprise, and investor is no longer whether AI will transform cloud economics. It's whether they can adapt quickly enough to thrive in the transformation.
Thanks for joining us on Frost & Sullivan's Growth Podcast. For access to our research, competitive benchmarking, and best practice frameworks, head over to frost.com or email hello@frost.com. We'll be back soon with more to help you stay clear-headed and growth-ready.